Hi creative friends, this is Soraya and thank you so much for being here. So today I'm going to do a video called creating first layers on watercolor paper. Now watercolor paper is a fantastic surface for mixed media for three big reasons. The first reason is that it is a very hardy paper. You can add tons of layers on top of this surface. The second reason is it is very versatile, and what I mean by that is you can use lots of different media over top of this type of paper. You can use watercolor paints, you can use acrylic paints, acrylic inks, collage, pens of all sorts, pencils, you can use gouache, collage, and if I wanted to, I could actually add oils on top of this paper. I would just have to prime it. So just say I wanted to use oil paints on top of watercolor paper, I could add 2 layers of gesso, allow it to completely dry, and then work with my oils right on top of this paper. And the third reason is watercolor paper creates a sense of luminosity that is very hard to get from other sorts of paper. Now, I don't understand the whole reason behind this, but from my very rudimentary understanding, it's when the paints sink into the page, they reflect the white of the paper back at you, like when you use transparent paints. And so it creates a sense of light that it's hard to get that with another substrate. So I'm going to show you a few of my backgrounds that are in different stages of completion. And this is watercolor paper, and this is probably a second layer. I see some collage over here, and I used acrylic inks and paints that I watered down. I also have some Stabilo pencils, maybe some graphite, and most of the paint is very transparent, but there are some areas where I put a thick layer of the acrylic paint, like so. And I'm going to show you the difference between, say, watercolor paper and Bristol paper. So this background here is on Bristol paper, and with Bristol paper it's a very smooth surface and the paints tend to kind of float above or float on top of the page, and they do eventually sink into the fibers of the paper, but because it's so smooth, there is this feeling of immediacy and vibrancy that you get with Bristol paper. And with watercolor paper, the paints sink into the page, so you get a very softer, almost like a velvety kind of an outcome. And I hope you can see the difference in the two substrates. So this is watercolor paper and this is Bristol paper, and they just have a different look to them right from the start, even though I'm still using the same art supplies and I'm using the same techniques. They look different. So this is also watercolor paper, probably my first layer, and I've just used acrylic inks, acrylic paints that I really watered down, but there's some gold here and that's very opaque. So some Stabilo pencil, some graphite, and this has collage over here, some collage, and I've used the paint in really thick kind of lines over here, but then I've also mixed that with a transparent wash. So the pad that I am using is Canson, and this is 140 pounds, so it's a mid-weight paper, which is really great for mixed media. Now you can go to an art shop and they have huge pieces of paper, like say 22 by 30 inches and even maybe larger than that. And those papers come in a 300-pound weight, and those are really, really heavy. So, you can vary the weight of paper depending on how many layers you're going to add on top of it. Now, the one I have is cold press, and basically what that means is it's got more tooth than the hot press. And so from my understanding, the cold press has more texture to the paper, so that means that the paints sink into the paper faster than with a hot press, because a hot press paper is much smoother. It's more smoother than the cold press, so the paints tend to sit on top of the paper a little bit longer before they sink into the page. And if you have a pad like this, you can even cut pages to size and make up an art journal of your own. But before we get started, I just wanted to share this beautiful jewel of a book. I purchased this at the gift shop at the Louvre, and it is such a gorgeous book. I can't wait to dive in. So the covers are made out of handmade paper, and inside it is 100% cotton handmade watercolor paper. So I can't wait to start using this book. And I just wanted to share that. It's just such a beautiful book. So let's get started. I am not going to use watercolor paints because I have a set of watercolor paints, but it's a very limited color range, and I have way more colors with my acrylics. So I'm going to water down my acrylics so that they are very like watercolory. And I love this orange, so I'm just going to start off, and I'm still in my beginner's mind. I'm still in a sense of curiosity, and you know, I'm not thinking about anything. I'm simply letting go, and it's really meditative, actually. It's a very meditative process. So now what I'm gonna do is I want to add like a darker color to the mix. And again, I'm gonna water it down a bit. And just create some interest to the page. Now, you guys, I wanted to share something with you. If I am going too slow for you, then there's a little button on the top right-hand corner of your screen, and it looks like a wheel. And if you press down on it, you can adjust the speed of the video. So you can watch it at normal speed, or you can go to 1.25 or 1.5 or 1.75, and then you can go all the way up to 2, which doubles the speed of the video. And you can even slow it down. So I used to make time-lapse art process videos and post it on my Instagram feed. And one of the comments I always got without fail is people would say that, you know, they wish that I could slow things down. And I completely agree with that, because when I watch a time-lapse video, I cannot understand what is going on. Like I can't, you know, I can't see what's happening. There's no explanation, because with a time-lapse video, you have to put music on the background. Like you cannot talk. But the thing is, with Instagram, there's a limit of the length of video you can post. Like I cannot post a 5-minute video on Instagram. So I completely agree with that. You know, people wanted me to slow down and to explain what I was doing, but I was unable to do that. But, you know, you can press that little icon, and you can kind of go slower or faster. And it's just a really nifty little tool, which I didn't know existed, but my daughter told me about it, and it's so useful, because sometimes I do want to speed things up when I'm watching something, and then sometimes I want to slow it down. So now I'm still using my acrylic paint, but I'm using it kind of in a little bit of a thicker manner. And I'm just making some interesting marks here. So I've gotten a lot of comments talking about fear, and I'm going to make a separate video about fear. But, you know, I totally understand, because I remember when I first started, and for the longest time after, I would be plagued with all sorts of fears. The fear of the blank page, the fear of me not knowing what I was doing, the fear of me wasting my art supplies, the fear of, well, what is everybody going to think? The fear of, I mean, there's a million different fears that come up. And I think the thing that helped me the most to eliminate that sense of fear is to be in a state of curiosity and beginner's mind, because when you're in a state of curiosity, all you're doing is just almost like being in a childlike state of, well, I just want to see what happens. Like, let me see if I dip this in here, if I mix this color with this color, if I do this, like what's going to happen. And I don't think the mind can hold equal space for fear and curiosity, because fear is full of judgment, and fear is full of trepidation and questioning, and like questioning in a bad way, like, well, what if I do this and it doesn't work out? Or, what is somebody, what is this person going to think of me, when they find out that I don't know what I'm doing, etc., etc. But curiosity is a different kind of questioning. It's a very open-minded questioning where there's no judgment, and it's just about, oh, if I do this, well, what would happen? Let me see. And that really changed everything for me, because when you approach things in a sense of humility and, like, hey, I am here to learn. I am here to figure this out. I am here to experiment. That changes everything, because fear cannot live in that space. So that was something that really helped me out. And I think all of us as creatives, we do struggle with fear. And I talked about this in a video I made probably a month or two ago. And I talked about the artist Degas, who was a painter, but he wanted to make sculptures. And he made one sculpture. It's called the Little Ballerina Girl, I believe. And it was the first mixed media sculpture. And so what I mean by that is he used like real fabric for the tutu, and he used real hair for the hair. And so he combined like a metal sculpture with actual fabric and hair and all sorts of things. And it's a beautiful, evocative, sensitive, just a truly beautiful piece of art. But he was so savagely mocked that he never made another sculpture again in his whole entire life. And I mean, that's so sad. He let his fears get the better of him. And it's just really sad, because by all accounts, he wanted to stop painting and he wanted to start making sculptures. And he was really great at it. He was a genius at it, actually. And I think it's something we all struggle with. And it's, I don't know if a lot of people talk about it. I know Elizabeth Gilbert talked about it in Big Magic and in her TED Talk that she gave. But, I just think it's an important part of the creative process, so that we can learn how to, work with our fears, but also to find other ways of not letting fear run the show. And I think that when we're in beginner's mind and a state of curiosity, that's a great way to say, hey, I'm not going to let fear drive this car. So I'm just using my Stabilo, and I'm using it wet. And now I'm going to use my black Stabilo, and I'm going to use it dry. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use my orange acrylic paint, but I'm going to use it like in a thicker kind of an application. So I'm just going to kind of drag it, and I'm going to drag it through the blue here. So it just, you know, I have like the transparent acrylic ink, and then I also have it like thick. And I love that kind of juxtaposition of the thick and thin. So now I'm going to let this completely dry naturally. And this is the end of the creating first layers on watercolor paper. But if you guys wanted me to take this exact same background once it's completely dry and do another video, like, so that would be like probably still my first layers, but it would be like, you know, my first slash second layers. If you wanted me to do another video on that and how I work on the watercolor paper, if there's any interest, then I'll make another video. So thank you so much for watching till the end, and I hope that this has given you some kind of ideas about how to work with watercolor paper with your mixed media, and I'll see you in my next video. Bye!